Welcome to The Long Game, Voices from the Health Front, a show about the people, ideas, and breakthroughs that are changing what it means to live healthier and longer. I'm your host, Shlomi Madar, CEO of Spot It Early, where we are building a multi-cancer early detection platform using man's best friend and AI. And today I'm super excited. We're sitting down with Robbie Evans, Managing Director of Leeds United, calling in from Elland Road, I'm assuming. Before Robbie was running Premier League club, he spent 11 years scaling one of the largest genetic testing companies in the world, Invitae. His career touches almost everything we care about on this show, how you build the company, how you lead when things get hard, and applying leadership and insights across industry. So let's get into it. Robbie, welcome to the show. And before we get anywhere else, please help our listeners map how you got here, because really your arc of career is as unique as it gets. I mean, Stanford Economics, then the 49ers, then more than a decade at Invitae, and now the managing director at Leeds United. So maybe I should ask, like, what is the connective tissue for you? And when did you realize that actually, jumping across industries was not a detour, but actually part of a strategy?
Yeah, well, the connective tissue will end up being some combination of work that has a mission. And I think that missional work can be biotech and medicine, but also can be sporting work. I sort of followed a combination of culture and mission through all those things. The way I got here was when I was younger, I wanted to be in sports. I wrote my college application at 16 years old around like running a sports team. And so that was my long-term goal. Uh, I built myself into having that kind of capability. I wanted to be like, get the right experiences. I was in consulting, I was in finance. And I was sort of networking to make connections, and that made a connection with Niners 20 years ago or so. And that became an interview 2 years later, which I did not get a job there. And then I sort of hung around, keeping the connection going for a year plus, and then got hired eventually. Worked there for 3 years, loved being in sport, but also, and did a huge project there to help build a stadium, Levi Stadium. But then like over time realized like there were parts of that job that weren't quite as satisfying as I'd hoped they'd be, and began to look for more like sort of like mentorship and growth. And so I ended up in biotech because like I had a chance to work for two like world-class mentors, entrepreneurs. And so I followed them and became the 25th employee of Invitae. That became like a multi-thousand person, multi-billion-dollar company. And so I had like an 11-year apprenticeship from like world-class mentors. And so then I became a biotech guy, and I was in medicine and diagnostics, and I was learning all kinds of things about growth companies and culture and building teams, growing teams, shrinking teams, all kinds of stuff, ups and downs. And then, yeah, the 49ers group bought Leeds United Football Club in England and wanted to bring over some execs. So they sort of pinged me and said, "Do you want to come?" And I've been 11 years at Invitae and like kind of was ready for something new. And so I thought I was done with sports, frankly, but like the work here is like really important work. It's a huge part of the community. Leeds is the biggest one club city in all of Europe. And so like our club is like the sort of heart of this whole region. And so I was like, sure, let's have an adventure and move across the world. But again, like the thread through all that is, a place that I can believe in the work and building high quality, high functioning, strong culture teams. Just it happens to be when I look back in my career, I'll have done like kind of a half biotech, half sporting career.
So I just want to say I really enjoyed kind of you taking us like an overview of your career. This is great. I now wish to double click on some points in your career. So maybe, the Invitae chapter is one that our audience will connect the most with. And you were there for 11 years. You rose to the executive team. You
Mhm.
also, like you said, you watched the company or helped the company grow from a startup to well over 1 million patients tested across, hereditary cancer, cardiology, neurology, rare diseases, and others. And
Yep.
then all the way through with the acquisition from ArcherDX. So if you can take us more specifically through moments of this journey that meant something to you, that you felt like, or major milestones we know that for a startup, it's not linear, right? There are
Yeah,
moments in time where you have to overcome, difficulties. So if you can tell us a little bit about your journey there.
sure. I'll make like some notes here real quick. I'll call out three. I'll do four. So, and these need to be, positives and negatives, right? So, um, when we first began selling stuff, so I joined pre-commercial, and our first sale, we had an actual bell in the office that like when a sample would come in and like the FedEx package of like a spit tube or a blood tube, actually ring the bell like a proper sales bell. And the first time that bell got rang, it was like a pretty amazing moment of like, wow, like we're now helping patients. We're not just like building a database and building a lab and a CLIA license, but we're actually doing the thing. And so that kind of made it all very real. One of my favorite memories at Invitae was our first payer contract. So Randy Scott, who was our chairman and one of those mentors I mentioned before, like a legend in the cancer diagnostic space, founder of Genomic Health and others. Randy and I met with some payer, I think it was Blue Shield of California, and we had a great meeting. And they were like, "Yeah, we'd love to bring you a contract, like get you a code." And so we finished. I was like, "Wow, like that actually happened." And we're sitting there in some random town in the middle of California, and he's like, "Let's go get milkshakes at McDonald's." So we got like McFlurries in the drive-through to celebrate that. And so, getting a McFlurry with your sort of like legendary biotech mentor was a great moment. And like for me now as an exec, I try to keep that kind of like, what are some like lighthearted moments that like will be important to others that I can engage in, because I played in like our team or our all staff like play football on the pitch event at the end of the season, company picnic. And so like, playing with the chief exec as like a thing that I'll do is be like available to people as like a regular guy. From there, like, we went public and that was a big day. Although frankly, for me, like I didn't really celebrate that as much as I should have. I was like, hey, we're not done yet. Like, got to help more patients and like stop burning cash. So like I was kind of all business on IPO day, but I wish I'd sort of partied a little harder. The millionth patient was a big day. So like, tracking every patient over years and years, like we now have 1 million people was a big one. And for me, I'm not an academic. I don't have a PhD or whatever, but I'm on one paper, which was we actually expanded our intake of Medicare patients to match what we felt was appropriate based on what the data said versus what the guidelines said was appropriate. So we were serving more patients than would be in guidelines. I mean, lost money in all those patients, but that allowed us to do a paper saying that we felt like the sort of line for coverage should go from here to here because we're seeing on these sort of like out of guidelines patients a certain positive incidence rate. And so while I'm not an academic, my name is somewhere on that paper, and like that paper moved guidelines. And so we know not just there's the million patients that we help directly through our actual services, but then there's millions and millions and millions of people that are now qualified for testing who wouldn't be otherwise. And so to me, like a big part of the game in diagnostics, one of the challenges is that the expert knowledge of what should be diagnosed or should be even screened for is way ahead of insurance guidelines. And so
Yeah.
either you can lose millions and millions and millions of dollars running tests for free to prove you're right, or you can wait a decade, and neither one's really appealing. And so in that case, we just ate the money and ran thousands of tests at our expense, but it helped people. And that was very, very helpful for us and helpful for patients. A challenge would be one of the ways that Invitae grew was through a lot of M&A. So we bought, I don't even know, 7 companies, 10 companies, something like that. And they helped us to go faster to get into cardiology, get into rare disease, get into sort of pediatric care. But man, like the learning there was like integrating cultures is super hard, especially across different geographies. And so if we could do it again, I probably would have done quite as many and then a really diligent on what is like an absolute must do versus kind of like a nice to do, because to integrate teams, it was a ton of work, and it made it just like it just not drags you down, but it adds a lot of like operating burden to the current core functionality of the group. And so that was a learning for sure. And Leeds is not going to acquire a neighboring club and merge them together, but like that same kind of principle of like making sure that you stick to your core competencies and keep the team streamlined and focused versus like getting sort of distracted and too spread thin is applicable anywhere, I think.
Awesome, awesome lessons. Thank you so much for sharing. One of the points that you raised is that I think, recent developments in multi-cancer testing, we see now. So I just got back from ASCO, the largest oncology conference in the US, and the recent results of actually the NHS Gallery study came out, and they didn't meet the endpoint criteria, but it raised a lot of questions, and I felt that amongst different experts, and I'm talking, about oncologists and even patients and advocacy groups, is that we have not really defined what is a good measure for a good screening program, and we shouldn't just let the industry experts decide because it touches all of us. And like you said, you guys really moved the needle, and you paid for it, right? You lost a lot of money, but eventually you managed to impact so many lives. So I think, like you said, there's always a gap between the guidelines and where, actually reality is, especially when you see early onset of cancers in our field, where you need to lower the eligibility, the age eligibility. You see it with lung cancer, right? Where people are vaping now, but the guidelines talk about, pack
So
years, like smoking cigarettes. So these are great lessons. Thank you for sharing. So I want to transition to your current seat, if I may. As we mentioned, you are the managing director of a Premier League club that just came back up. You're overseeing a lot of stuff, recruitment, you handle data, stadium development, summer window. We talked a little bit before we started this podcast. I heard it's over 100 million pounds. So, and
can't say
we've
that,
read,
but
yeah, uh, okay, I'm just,
we'll see.
from rumors. And we read that you have brought something called the exec huddle from your days at the 49ers. So if you can walk our listeners through what data first football club looks like day to day. You
Yeah.
mentioned it's different than what it was 30 years ago. I'm curious to hear in what way.
Yeah, so I can discuss how we work a little bit, which has been not so talked about too much outside the world, but like the folks who know kind of know. And I actually kind of like grimace a bit when folks call us like data first. It's not quite true, I don't think. So what I try to bring is, I'm fully aware that I'm not a football expert. And so what I bring to Leeds, same thing I brought to Invitae, was like, I'm not a biotech molecular chemistry expert either. But my job is to help identify what are the key problems to solve, what are the key objectives, and then focus the right people and the right resources on those objectives, and then make sure they're working well together. And that working well together is the key part here. So to me, when you're evaluating players in particular, there's kind of a scouting lens, there's a data lens, there's like a coaching lens, like how things all fit on the current squad. And you don't want any one of those to be dominant. Like I don't think we should be data only or scouting only or coaching only. But if they all agree, it's pretty hard to go wrong. And so what we've built around here is kind of like what I call the three-way yes, of like all those different parties have a platform to share their point of view. And my job is to facilitate like a constructive discussion among all those different elements so that no one's getting left behind. At a lot of clubs, the scouts don't know the strategy, or the data guys aren't involved, or the coaches have total say, or in some cases no say. It depends on the sort of the club. So my overall like view on leadership in general is like have a high functioning team. And that's a very simple phrase, but it's pretty hard to do. And so for us on football stuff, it's building a leadership group across scouting, data, sporting, coaching that gets along, communicates, can have hard conversations, can collaborate. And so far, we're like, sort of 2 seasons in from me leading that process. We've had a very high hit rate. And so it seems to be working. And sometimes you might miss someone that like data loves, but someone else doesn't love, and then they turn out to be pretty good. So there's some that we regret, but if you look at the players we've actually brought in, our success rate's quite high. And so I view that as like just one example of why teamwork is the path to all these things.
Great. And maybe like a follow-up question, try to connect the last two topics. So where do you see the sharpest parallels between running a Premier League club and running a healthcare or biotech business, if there is any?
Yeah, I think that, I would say not just those two because they're quite different, obviously. But like my view is like kind of all companies are fundamentally the same. Like you have goals, you have objectives, or you should at least. You have challenges. And then it's like, what is the right collection of people to overcome those challenges? Can they work well together? Can you build a culture of collaboration? Can you get the right resources in? Like Invitae is very well funded, so is Leeds. So like if you have no money, you can't solve your problems. So, having the capital to apply towards those problems is also key. And so in that sense, like, if you read the books that I tend to lean on, so Patrick Lencioni is my favorite author on like leadership and teamwork. It's all about what's the clarity of the organization, what's my job, what are my goals as far as the executive level. And then on the team level, it's like trust, teamwork, accountability, healthy conflict, like having like proper debate. And so those things are always true. And that's true even inside your role. You're at the top of the whole company, or you're like the leader of the sales group, or you're a leader of the sporting group, or you're the coach himself. It's like know your objectives, get the right people in, work well together. I talk about inside the business side, like the value of teamwork, measuring teamwork as like a performance metric, not just like good at my job being like my skill set, but also like having to work as a group. And we all know it's inherently true because like there's football teams out there that have talent who don't play very well as a group, and like they don't perform as a team. And we know so they're not playing as a team. And yet, like in the business office, in our normal lives, people don't talk that way. And so it's like creating a culture of achievement and teamwork across sporting vectors, but also across business vectors is like the same objective. And so to me, like every company is both very different in terms of like what they do, but they're quite similar in terms of like how you can succeed.
Nice. All right, let's get to the fun part. Let's talk about the World Cup.
Okay.
So we're recording this podcast in the final stages of the tournament. I think it's already given us plenty to unpack, a lot of memorable moments. So the US team went out to Belgium in the round of 16, kind of echoing 2014, but they really played well up until that game. We had
Yep.
England beat Mexico also in a very exciting game, and they are in the quarterfinals now with Norway next. And of course, at least to me, Messi at 39 is still, producing so much magic. It's so much fun to watch. So maybe now, as you are kind of a Brit American hybrid living over
Yeah.
there, and as a sports executive, you watch elite performers up close. Uh, how are you reading this tournament? And also, when it comes to lifting the trophy, who do you think will do that eventually?
It's been fun. So my kids are American born, but they've had now a third or half of their life in the UK. So they're kind of hybrid England/American fans. I did watch the USA versus Belgium game at 1 in the morning out here. So it ended like 3:00 a.m. It was a tough night to lose 4-1 and then be up all night. My prediction all along has been that France is the best team. They have looked the best team so far. So that seems to be on track. We'll see how it goes. My view coming in was that of the teams that could really surprise outside the obvious kind of like France, Argentina, Germany, Spain, maybe England would be Norway. So again, like easy to say now because they're in the sort of round of whatever it is, the quarterfinals, round of 8. But I've always felt they were strong, especially across the front three, the attacking line. So we'll see. France to me was the best team coming in, and they've looked absolutely incredible so far. So England's been good. England's been really sort of tough-minded. Like winning at the Azteca, which is like an incredibly hard place to play football, was a huge accomplishment. So that could be the galvanizing victory. But we'll see. Like European football or global football rather is like more democratic now than ever. Like teams like Morocco is good, Norway is good, Belgium's good. Like these teams are all talented. So we have like and teams in Switzerland who's quite skilled too. Like that team's pretty good too. So you never know, but you think the big favorites come through in the end, and I would think that France wins it all, but you never know.
All right. So are you ready for the lightning round?
Yeah, sure, go for
All
it.
right. So these are fun questions. You don't have to overthink it. We try to make it also relevant to the World Cup. So, but not just. So, in your opinion, what's the best signing of this summer at the Premier League window? It could be yours or anyone else's.
For this summer,
Yes.
I can't say someone else's. That's just against the rules. So this summer was young. We just signed Harry Wilson, who's a right winger on a free deal from Fulham. He was their player of the season last year. So I think signing a guy who had like almost 20 combined goals and assists last year for as a free agent at our exact spot of need as a top signing. So I'll go with Harry Wilson for us right now.
Awesome. And maybe if you can share one lesson from Invitae that you apply in your daily work at Leeds United.
One lesson. Okay, so we didn't have like company values like accountability, vulnerability. We had like principles. And so the one that I constantly quote here is calm is contagious. So Invitae grew at a very high speed for a long time, and it was at times chaotic. And so our CEO would say like, look, calm is contagious. If you're calm, the team is calm. And so here at Leeds, like we've got promotion, relegation, state and development, all kinds of stuff, like outside noise, press noise. It's just constantly chaotic and noisy if you let it be. But I quote, calm is contagious repeatedly to our team.
Nice. All right. Last one. So you're in a knockout game. You have to take the last penalty. You have Mbappé, Kane, or Haaland. Who takes the shot?
For a PK, probably Harry Kane. I would say that Harry is the best PK taker in the world right now.
I would agree. All right. So, Robbie, thank you so much for taking the time, for coming on today. That's all for today's episode for the Long Game Voices from the Health Front. If you want to follow Robbie's work, Leeds United are at leedsunited.com. And to learn more about what we are building at Spot It Early, please head to spotitearly.com. We'll see you next time.